My name is Nabihah Iqbal and I'm a musician, DJ, producer and broadcaster from London, currently sitting in Jimi Hendrix's bedroom in Mayfair in central London, and it feels quite good. Well, I have to say that I am a little jealous of the setup in Jimi Hendrix's bedroom with these big speakers that fill the space. Hopefully one day I will also have space to get in these big, nice wooden vintage speakers as well, and a nice system to I'll just have one room just for listening to music with a bed like this, I think, and you could just come in and lie down and just turn it up really loud. I feel that just having access, first of all, to the music that Jimi Hendrix was listening to in here is really special in itself, but now the fact that we can listen to it on a system that is as close as we can get to what he had, and you know, the same speakers, the same model of turntable and a very similar amp by the same company who would have supplied Hendrix's one. It makes it even more of a sort of time travelling experience because, you know, I've already had a listen on the speakers when I came in today, and yeah, it's just amazing. Like, you just get surrounded in this beautiful world of sound, and it makes me feel like when Jimmy was in here, he probably just didn't want to leave. You just stay in here all day and listen to the music and order food from the restaurant downstairs and just chill out. So today I've been asked to pick out some of my favourite records from Jimi Hendrix's record collection, which was quite an interesting task to do. It's just nice to go through the whole kind of catalogue to see what sort of music he was listening to whilst living here in London. And there's a lot of crossover between our tastes, which is good. And so yeah, I picked out a few of the records just to kind of talk about them and try and think about maybe what Jimi Hendrix was feeling when he was listening to the music. The first choice that I've picked is Highway 61 Revisited by Bob Dylan. I saw that Jimi Hendrix had a lot of Bob Dylan records, and I could have easily have just picked out all of them because I'm also a massive Bob Dylan fan. I love the energy of this album, and you know, it's got like so many great tracks on it, and I also love the cover because I feel like even though this is from the 60s, it looks like it's from the 80s. He's quite ahead of his time in this kind of like synthetic printed shirt. One of my best friends at uni at that time, who was also really into Bob Dylan, had just given me this massive paper bag full of all of Bob Dylan's back catalogue, which is a lot. It just blew me away, the whole Bob Dylan world, and now I'm like a die-hard Dylan fan, yeah. If I had to pick one track from this record, I'd probably pick Like a Rolling Stone. It's a track that Jimi Hendrix covered too, so it's an extra connection. The next record I picked is Ravi Shankar, Portrait of a Genius, and I also own this album. I can understand why Jimi Hendrix would have been into sitar music at that time. You know, it's part of the whole psychedelic 60s scene, and for me, Ravi Shankar is just what, you know, he is a genius, and I also play the sitar, obviously nowhere near the level of Ravi Shankar, but learning that instrument, it just made me appreciate that style of music and the instrument and sort of North Indian classical music in general much more. It's hard to explain, but there's something really special about when you play the sitar. When I listen to Hendrix, I can definitely hear how sitar music will have influenced his guitar playing as well. If I had to choose a track from this, I'd probably choose the Tabla Dhwani, which is a track that's not too long compared to some of the other ones. It's got 3 tabla players on it altogether, and they all have 2 tabla drums each, and just the drumming patterns on it are incredible. The next record I picked is a Roland Kirk one, Rip, Rig and Panic, and Roland Kirk's one of my favourite jazz musicians ever, and since picking this record I found out that Roland Kirk and Jimi Hendrix actually had a jam session in this room, which just adds even more to the magical nature of where we're sat at the moment, and it's hard to believe that those 2 people were in here making music, and Jimi Hendrix spoke about it as being one of the highlights of his life and his musical career, but no one recorded it. But I guess that's the way with all the best things, they don't really get recorded. I can see how it fits with Jimi Hendrix's ethos, and if I was going to pick a track from it, I'd probably pick the title track, Rip, Rig and Panic, just because it's really out there. My next choice is a Richie Havens album. There are a few in Jimi Hendrix's collection and I picked out Electric Havens. All the records are great, but then I just love the artwork of this one too, this painting of Richie Havens' face on an American plug socket in front of the sun. Richie Havens is probably the only musician from that whole scene of musicians that I've had the chance to see live. Just going through Hendrix's collection actually and seeing how much black American music he had on record made me think that, you know, him living here in London in a totally different setting, in a different society, those records were his way of getting back in touch with his own heritage. And I also know that they hung out here together in this room. I mean, I guess so many amazing musical legends have passed through this room, but to know that Richie Havens and Roland Kirk were two of them feels good. And if I had to pick a track from this, I'd pick probably Boots of Spanish Leather, which is Richie Havens' cover version of Bob Dylan's track. My next record that I picked is Handel's Messiah, and going through Jimi Hendrix's record collection, I noticed that he had quite a few Handel records, and it struck me that the reason behind this must be because Hendrix knew about the fact that they lived in the same building next door to each other, but 200 years apart. He must have felt like, okay, I need to listen to what music this man was making and try and get into that headspace. I know that he said he once saw Handel's ghost in the mirror. There's something there, you know, there's something which is kind of like beyond the grasp of explanation, but maybe there is a sort of musical connection between Handel's spirit and Jimi Hendrix being here in the same space so many years apart. Is it a coincidence or is it something else? Who knows? To pick a track from this, I'd go for the Hallelujah Chorus, which is one of Handel's most famous pieces of work. I've also picked one Jimi Hendrix record, seeing as we are sitting in his bedroom after all, and it's my favourite album of his, Electric Ladyland. I know that Jimmy apparently did not approve the cover and he didn't even like it, so he just gave his music when it was finished to the record label and this is what they came up with. But don't really have to worry about the cover, we just have to worry about the music inside, which is just, it's just incredible really. And Voodoo Child, like the long version on here, is just, I could listen to that on repeat without listening to anything else ever again if I had to choose one thing. He's just so cool, isn't he? It's just like when you see him perform that track or any of the tracks on this or any of his music, he's just, no one can ever be Jimi Hendrix, there's only one. When I looked at the list of Jimi Hendrix's records, it made sense to me, I think, you know, on the whole. I was also quite surprised by some elements of it, definitely seeing how much Handel he had, and just that made me think about what was Hendrix thinking when he was listening to that music. I definitely think the fact that we have access to what Jimi Hendrix's record collection was like whilst he was living in London helps us to paint a better picture of who he was. I also have my own record collection at home. I think it's also part of a more general trend recently where you see vinyl gaining more popularity again, and I feel like it's because it's a bit of a reaction to just the digital format. That's fine, but it's not the same as having something tangible in your hand. It's just about the physicality, you know, of the record, the artwork, the sleeve notes, just all of that which you miss out on when you don't have anything to actually hold in your hands. And then of course the sound quality as well. If you've got a well-pressed record, you know, can't really beat that. I first noticed the Handel and Hendrix blue plaques outside like quite a few years ago when I was just walking through Central, and then I noticed them, and obviously I was really excited by the fact that I was standing outside somewhere where Jimi Hendrix lived because I'm such a big fan. Since the opening I've been here a few times. I've also been lucky enough to DJ at one of the parties here. Good house party, hopefully they'll come back soon. I'm always excited to come back because I just feel like there's definitely his spirit here in the room and it's a special place. I feel like Jimi Hendrix is still just as important as he was when he was around, if not even more, and I feel like his legacy will always be there and it will continue.